Madam President, I rise today on the Senate floor to call for the resignation of John Kerry as a member of the Biden administration's National Security Council. Now, Madam President, I don't do this lightly. As a matter of fact, in my entire time in the Senate, I've never called for anyone's resignation. Obama-Biden administration, Trump administration, Biden administration now. Trust me, I've been tempted, particularly when some in government have tried to hurt my state. A lot of that's going on right now with the Biden administration. But his record, John Kerry's record of undermining working families and working against American national security interests is too much to bear. He needs to go. Today, I've heard such disturbing news, Madam President, that if true, it should absolutely result in the call of John Kerry either being fired or resigning. Enough is enough. Why am I saying this? Madam President, first, he's killing jobs, arrogantly killing American jobs. That's a fact. He's putting hardworking Americans, particularly in the energy sector, the great men and women who make our country strong by developing oil and gas resources, a lot of my constituents, in the name of climate goals, he's putting them out of work. He's going to Wall Street saying, don't finance these projects anymore. That's what reporters are saying. Now, on these issues, I completely and adamantly disagree with the arrogant way, frankly, callous way he talks about, hey, people need to move on to better jobs. But for this issue alone, I wouldn't be calling for his resignation. This is a major difference in the Biden administration's policies and priorities with regard to the American people. I think it's going to really come back and hit this administration hard, because the vast majority of Americans don't agree with putting people out of work, energy workers out of work during a recession and a pandemic. But that's going to be decided in the voting box, in the elections. The American people will ultimately decide on whether arrogantly putting thousands and thousands of energy workers out of work right now is a good idea. In the name of these climate goals, he's also been a strong appeaser of countries that threaten ours. Let me take you back to 2015. I was a brand new U.S. Senator. President Obama, President Xi Jinping are meeting in the Rose Garden. President Xi Jinping of China tells the President of the United States and the American people, no, we are not going to militarize the South China Sea. We won't do it. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party was not telling the truth to the President of the United States and the American people. They started to do this already, militarizing one of the most important sea routes in the world. Many of us here in the Senate, Democrats and Republicans, said we need to stand up for our interests. We need the U.S. Navy to do freedom of navigation operations. The Secretary of Defense wanted to do this. The Admiral in charge of the Indo-PACOM area of responsibility wanted to do this. But we now know in principals meetings, we delayed doing this for almost 3 years because John Kerry said, we don't want to get the Chinese mad or they'll go back on their Paris climate deal and commitments, which, by the way, are way out in the future. This is true. This is true. This happened. And again, in my view, this bordered on treacherous but not treasonous. I didn't call for his resignation then. I certainly was mad about it. By the way, a lot of people in the Obama administration were mad about this, including the Secretary of Defense. We lost a lot of time. Certainly makes me nervous that John Kerry's out in Beijing again. What kind of deal did he cut this time with China? The Communist Party of China, who won't keep any commitments. But again, that wasn't a call for resignation. Madam President, the straw that broke the camel's back came out today. And it's the reason I'm up here calling for John Kerry to resign. It is a tape that was leaked of an interview with Iran's foreign minister, Mohammad Zarif. First, some background. Zarif was being interviewed by an economist and journalist who was an advisor to Mohammad Khamenei, the pro-reform cleric who served 2 terms as Iran's president. An edited version was intended to be public of this interview only after Iran's current president left office in August, but it was leaked. Zarif, according to reports, says many interesting and telling things in the tape. One, for example, that in my view, the rightful killing of General Soleimani, the Quds Force commander, in January of 2020, when he was in Iraq looking to kill more American soldiers, Zarif said this, quote, was a major blow to Iran, more damaging than if it had wiped out an entire city in an attack. That's what a lot of us were arguing at the time. And that unlike what John Kerry's been telling the public when negotiating the Iran nuclear deal in the Obama administration, it is the Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Quds Force, not Zarif, who calls the shots in Iran. That's all in the tapes. But, Madam President, the most disturbing part of the interview that was leaked was when Zarif said that John Kerry told him, the Iranian foreign minister, about covert Israeli actions against Iranian interests in Syria. Now think about that. According to news reports, Zarif is heard as saying, quote, it was former U.S. Foreign Secretary John Kerry who told me Israel had launched more than 200 attacks on Iranian forces in Syria, unquote. That's Zarif saying John Kerry told him that. Classified information about one of our most important allies in the world, Israel. Zarif said, quote, he listened to this information from Secretary Kerry in astonishment, unquote. Now, Madam President, when I read this today, I was astonished as well that a former Secretary of State, now a member of President Biden's National Security Council, wasn't confirmed for that, by the way, by this body, would reveal the secrets of one of our most important and enduring allies in the region to an avowed enemy, the largest state sponsor of terrorism. A country that was responsible for the killing and wounding and maiming of thousands of American servicemen and women, whose leaders have the blood of American soldiers on its hands. He's telling them that information. Madam President, it is unclear why John Kerry would relay such information to the leaders of the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. But here's a guess. During the Trump administration, after that administration pulled out of the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, which John Kerry negotiated, and by the way, a bipartisan majority of U.S. senators in this body were against that deal, John Kerry started to freelance. He admitted to meeting with Zarif in 2018 to try to salvage the nuclear deal. In other words, he was likely acting and working against the previous administration, the elected administration of the Trump administration, and many of us here in Congress who applauded when we pulled out of the JCPOA. Madam President, I'd like to submit for the record an article written today by the National Review titled "John Kerry, Enemy of Israel."
Without objection.
The beginning of this article says, "Let's pause to reflect on how monumentally stunning it is that the former U.S. Secretary of State allegedly tattled on Israel to Iran." It goes on to say, "A high-ranking American official would feel comfortable sharing this kind of classified information with an autocratic adversary, a government that's murdered hundreds of Americans, regularly kidnapped them, interfered with our elections, and propped up a regime that gasses its people about the covert actions of a longtime critical American ally." What else did Kerry tell Zarif? This article asks. Press reports don't say. But Madam President, if this is true, if John Kerry told Iran, the leaders of Iran, about issues relating to our most critical ally in the region, Israel, who Iran has repeatedly said they want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, if he did this, he needs to resign. If he did this with the intent of undermining the current president of the United States at the time, President Trump, and the members of this body, he needs to resign. Madam President, he is a member of the current administration's National Security Council. It's become clear, Madam President, that our adversaries, whether Beijing or Iran, like it when John Kerry is in charge of foreign policy and national security. Why? Because they know how to use him to their advantage. And our allies fear him. Why? Because they know his judgment is off on so many issues. So too do America's working families. We need to look into this. If this is true, I certainly hope other members of this body, Democrats and Republicans, will join me in calling for the resignation of John Kerry. Enough is enough. The red line that was crossed, if this is true, revealing secret information to one of America's most sworn enemies, with the blood of thousands of American military members on its hands, undermining the interests of one of our most important allies, the State of Israel. If this is true, John Kerry needs to go. He should resign, or he should get fired by the President of the United States. I yield the floor.